Minimalism. The concept of minimalism is one that is commonly discussed amongst folks who are in the personal finance YouTube community, but it's not necessarily a personal finance topic in and of itself. And there's one aspect of minimalism that I basically never hear anybody talk about. And in this video, I'm going to talk about it. But before we begin, I may have to describe a little bit about what minimalism is, so that at least, even if you've heard of the concept, you kind of get where I'm coming from. So what is minimalism? Now, there are a lot of YouTube videos and YouTubers who live a minimalist lifestyle, and they can give you a much better definition than I can. But for all intents and purposes, minimalism is kind of what it sounds like. It's living a very simplistic life with very few material things. It's the idea of going against the grain that society wants you to just consume and buy as much stuff as possible. And that there is both simplicity as well as financial freedom and general freedom that can be achieved through minimalism. And this seems very appealing to a lot of people. We no longer have to chase the latest gadget. We can be content with just what we have. Now, the thing about minimalism is that when you see people talk about minimalism, they tend to just not have a lot of stuff. But there's something about this view, this perception of minimalism that I'd like to talk about. And that is the relative nature of minimalism. It's the fact that minimalism seems simplistic, but that's just because of what it's around. When you think about the United States, and I'm going to speak on the United States, and perhaps most modern first world countries that have a robust economic system, they're not third world developing countries or anything like that, they have a lot of stuff in general. Lots of people are consuming tremendous amounts of things, and so by comparison, people who do not spend that much appear as minimalists. But if you take that same person and compare him to somebody who lives in, say, a third world country where, you know, people are living off of like $1 or $2 a day, I mean, they're kings who are anything but minimalists. And even within the context of YouTube and watching videos about minimalism and the simplicity in lifestyle, there's one thing that I've noticed, which is that they may have quite a bit of space. Minimalism appears minimalistic because of the space around it. Someone can have 5 objects, but if those 5 objects are spread out in like a huge mansion or a huge space, then yeah, it doesn't look like that person has anything. But if you live in like a really tiny apartment and you don't have a lot of space, 5 objects may take up a quarter or more or even half of your living space. So yeah, you appear like just a normal dude, a normal person, you know, whatever. So to illustrate this point, what you see in front of you is a serving of broccoli on a small plate. It's good. It's about 125 grams of broccoli. That's fine. And when you get this in a restaurant, you're like, oh, it's a side of broccoli. Perfectly fine. But if I take this broccoli and I put it on this big plate here, well, doesn't look quite that much. You know, it's like, oh, I got the space. What do I do with this extra space here? I need to fill it with something. And even if I had the actual bowl that I eat food from, which is this gigantic bowl, you'd think like, Alex, what are you doing? Why do you have so little food? But this is actually the same thing. I just used different plates of different sizes, but it's the same amount of broccoli. Who eats this stuff anymore? I do. And it is this relative nature of minimalism that I think is very important for people to think about. When it comes to minimalism, there is an intentionality, a simplicity to life, but that's also with relationship to other things and your surroundings. Things only appear minimalistic compared to the norm. But if the norm changes, or if the norm shifts, then you might not appear as minimalistic. So I discussed the relative nature of minimalism. And here's where there's a tie into personal finance. Naturally, as people, as human beings, we like to fill voids. The idea of minimalism as we know it now, with people having very few things, is the void of space. And it's the easiest one to conceptualize. If there isn't a big empty room, we like to fill it with things. Furniture, stuff, trinkets, you name it. We want to fill it with stuff. We naturally want to. If a room is empty, we think there's something wrong with it. This also applies to other aspects of life, such as time and our mind. We naturally try to fill in our schedule to be as productive as possible, to do things. And with our mind, we very rarely are just bored. We're either constantly on our phone or thinking about something. We very rarely do nothing and are just present in the moment. Now, when it comes to personal finance, it's not necessarily a void of money, but a surplus of money that we feel the intrinsic need to spend it. And so minimalism tries to go against this idea of spending just for the sake of spending. That when you have a surplus of money, that you don't just instinctively try to spend it. And this is also known within the personal finance field as lifestyle creep. As you acquire more money, as your savings increases, or as you just make more money, you tend to spend it naturally. It happens to all of us, but we need to be mindful of this process. Lifestyle creep is a terrible trap. You just start to accumulate way too many things. You take on way too many liabilities. There are many personal finance and investing YouTubers out there who will talk about cash flow. I believe it was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad book that talked about the idea of a balance sheet, and that you have assets and liabilities, you have cash coming in, and you have cash coming out. And ideally, the rich are people who have more cash coming in than things going out. And the middle class trap, as Robert Kiyosaki describes it, is the idea that as you get more money, you also spend more money. You are trying to fill in some kind of void, and you spending money is the way you fill in that void, that you handle that surplus that you've been accumulating. So, to wrap it up, minimalism is relative. And be mindful of the trap that is trying to fill in voids. Minimalism, even within the aspects of time, space, money, our mind, it goes against our natural tendency to fill in voids, to be content with what we have already. That if there is some space, it's okay for that space to just be there, to exist, to find simplicity and beauty in the absence of things. And whether it's things from a spatial perspective, a time perspective, in your mind, those are all things that minimalism tries to address. Is this a new idea to you? I hope you learned something new. Please like, comment, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something new. I hope I got you to think about something a little bit differently. Perhaps I opened your minds up to a new way of thinking about minimalism that you might not have been exposed to before. All right? I'll see you soon. It was pretty good. This is just steamed broccoli. Oh, it's nice. Just reheat it. If you're watching this, because I just added some extra B-roll footage of me eating broccoli. It's not even really B-roll. I'm talking to you. So yeah, man. Minimalism. What do you think about it? You want to be more of a minimalist? Intentionality? You like eating broccoli? I'm actually thinking about starting a vlog. Because, just some people have commented about, I saw in my last video, I use some martial arts. I clearly make and eat food. It's pretty good. Yeah, thinking about doing a vlog. Leave a comment below. I'd like to know if you'd be interested in that. Alright? I'll see you soon.